The street was buzzing with the usual mid-morning rush, people moving in every direction, lost in their own world. Among them was Derek, a 36-year-old personal trainer with a heart as big as his muscular build. He was on his way to a community center where he volunteered part-time. Life hadn't been easy for him, but he'd built himself up, both literally and figuratively, and was always willing to help others. As he waited at a crosswalk, a sudden commotion caught his attention. Across the street, a woman in her late 50s clutched her chest and stumbled. Her face turned pale as she struggled to breathe. Bystanders froze, unsure of what to do. Without hesitation, Derek sprinted across the street, his gym bag flung over his shoulder. Before we continue, please support this channel as you like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also tell us where you are watching from. Thank you. Ma'am, are you okay? He asked urgently, kneeling beside her. She tried to speak but could only gasp, her hand trembling as she pointed toward her heart. Derek recognized the signs of a heart attack immediately. His CPR training kicked in as he laid her down gently on the pavement and began chest compressions, his voice steady as he instructed a nearby teenager to call 911. The woman's name was Eleanor, a well-dressed, affluent woman whose jewelry hinted at wealth. Derek didn't care about any of that, his focus was on saving her life. When the ambulance arrived, he stepped back, his hands shaking slightly but his heart relieved as the paramedics took over. "Who are you?" one of the EMTs asked, noticing Derek's sweat-soaked shirt. "Just someone who was in the right place at the right time," Derek replied before walking away. Meanwhile, before Derek could walk away, his information was obtained by one of the EMTs. Also, during the incident, the teenager who called 911 mentioned Derek's name to the dispatcher. This was because he overheard Derek introduce himself briefly before starting the CPR on Eleanor to ensure he wasn't a stranger in the situation. The EMT, recognizing the importance of documenting Good Samaritan actions, noted his name and gym logo from his sweat-soaked t-shirt and relayed it to Eleanor's daughter, Abigail, when she visited the hospital to thank those who had helped her mother. Days later, Derek was surprised to receive a call from the hospital. Eleanor's daughter, Abigail, wanted to thank him personally. Flattered but hesitant, he agreed to meet them in the hospital lobby. When he arrived, Abigail, a woman in her 30s with a polished demeanor, greeted him warmly. "Mr. Carter, I can't thank you enough for what you did. You saved my mother's life," she said sincerely. Derek, slightly uncomfortable with the attention, shrugged it off. "I just did what anyone should do," he replied. Then Eleanor herself appeared, pale but recovering. Her expression was harder to read. "Thank you," she said stiffly, her eyes avoiding his. Derek noticed the tension but didn't press it. The meeting ended on an odd note, but Derek thought little of it. That is, until 2 weeks later when he was served legal papers at his gym. Eleanor was suing him for unlawful touching and emotional distress, claiming his actions during the CPR were inappropriate. Derek was stunned. His friends, co-workers, and even strangers rallied around him when the news broke, but the lawsuit was real, and it threatened to destroy the life he'd worked so hard to build. The courtroom interactions were tense and dramatic. Eleanor's lawyer argued, while Mr. Carter acted out of good intentions, the emotional toll and distress caused by his actions cannot be ignored. Her lawyer continues, yes, while well-meaning, it had caused her unnecessary trauma. He should have waited for professional help. Nina, Derek's fiery attorney, countered passionately, this case isn't about emotional distress, it's about gratitude being turned into litigation. Derek Carter saved Mrs. Hastings' life, and this lawsuit is a slap in the face to all Good Samaritans who dare to help. Had Mr. Carter waited, Mrs. Hastings would not be alive today to file this baseless lawsuit. Witnesses brought powerful moments to the trial. The teenager who called 911 was tracked down through the emergency call records. When police contacted him, his parents allowed him to testify. In court, the boy recounted the moment Derek sprang into action, stating, "He saved her life." The boy testified, his voice cracking. "He didn't hesitate. He just saved her." Everyone else was frozen, everyone was just standing there, doing nothing, and he jumped in. His testimony moved the jury, particularly when he became emotional, expressing disbelief that someone so heroic was being treated unfairly. The courtroom became a battleground. Eleanor's daughter, Abigail, was also called to the stand. Abigail was another compelling witness. Though hesitant to speak against her mother, she ultimately revealed Eleanor's deep-rooted fear of vulnerability and losing control after her husband's death. Her words provided crucial context for Eleanor's behavior, softening the courtroom's view of her. Meanwhile, Abigail initially had no idea her mother was planning to sue Derek. She had been genuinely grateful for his actions and was horrified when she discovered the legal notice. Abigail confronted Eleanor privately, trying to reason with her, but Eleanor insisted it was about her dignity and the trauma she had experienced. This created tension between them, as Abigail struggled to reconcile her mother's decision with her gratitude for Derek's heroism. To everyone's shock, she revealed a deeper truth. "My mother, she's been struggling with anxiety and control issues ever since my father passed. This lawsuit isn't about Mr. Carter. It's about her own fear of vulnerability." The revelation shifted the mood in the courtroom. Eleanor sat silently, her face pale, as her daughter's words hung in the air. When it was Derek's turn to testify, he spoke with quiet dignity. "I didn't see a wealthy woman or a stranger. I saw someone in need, and I did what I was trained to do. I'd do it again, no matter the consequences." As the trial neared its conclusion, Eleanor's demeanor began to change. The weight of the public scrutiny, combined with her daughter's words, seemed to soften her resolve. With these pieces coming together, Eleanor began to see the error of her ways. On the final day, before the verdict could be read, Eleanor stood up and addressed the court. I want to withdraw the lawsuit," she said, her voice trembling. "Mr. Carter, I owe you an apology. You saved my life, and I let my own fears cloud my judgment. I'm sorry." The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Derek, though relieved, simply nodded. "Apology accepted," he said, his voice steady. Eleanor's withdrawal of the lawsuit was a turning point, not only for the trial but also for her relationship with Abigail and her perspective on life. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor reached out to Derek privately. They had coffee together, an unlikely bond forming as she shared her struggles and he shared his own. She even made a generous donation to the community center where Derek volunteered, a gesture of gratitude and reconciliation. The story made headlines, sparking debates about Good Samaritans and societal fear. But for Derek, it wasn't about the attention. It was about doing the right thing, even when it came at a personal cost. Eleanor, for her part, became an advocate for CPR training, often crediting Derek for saving not just her life, but her perspective. And Derek continued his work, his heart as strong and kind as ever, knowing that sometimes, even the hardest battles can lead to unexpected friendships. Was Derek wrong to have conducted a CPR on Eleanor? Would you act like Derek, or would you simply ignore? Share your thoughts in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Do not forget to turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories.